Hey everyone, I'm Alon Mizrahi. This is the Mizrahi Perspective, your most trusted source for native and organic Judeo-Arab anarchism and freedom philosophy. Now in this video, after this funny introduction, in this video I'm going to talk about Netanyahu and the choices Netanyahu faces and how the very bad choices he faces are the result of his previous choices and his very flawed character. Because you see, Netanyahu is the kind of idiot whose every success only complicates his situation further. Every time Netanyahu manages to pull something off, and he always does, almost always. Every time he manages to pull something off, he is in a worse situation than he was before. This is a unique talent of Netanyahu's, a very unique talent, and I'm going to talk about this in this video because there's a lot of things now, there's a lot of moving elements. Things are in motion in Israel, in the Jewish world, in the US. So I'm going to talk about this. But before I touch on this subject, I want to talk about something a little more general, because I see it as part of my mission to also encourage people, not through fake niceties, with this I don't do, but through widening the perspective, which is always good and recommended. Always widen the perspective of time, the perspective of space, the perspective of human psychology and human behavior. Always widen the perspective. And what I want to say about this is there's a lot of despair among people who identify deeply with the Palestinian struggle. There's so much unresolved and I don't want to say untreated. I don't mean it in a clinical way. There's so much raw pain experienced and accumulated over such a long period of time. People have been pushed or drawn to make some generalizations which I don't agree with. People will say some stuff like, humanity has failed us. Humanity has failed. And they will get to conclusions about about human nature itself. So I feel obliged to remind my viewers and to remind everyone, this is not humanity and this is not human nature that's committing genocide at the moment. The perpetrators and the guilty parties are very well defined. We know who they are. It is the state of Israel, it is the Jewish collective, and it is the political and cultural and financial and medical, generally the political establishments of the Western civilization. Those are the guilty parties. And this is not you or me. This has nothing to do with billions of people who never made this choice and wouldn't make this choice if they were given any option, any say in the matter. This is not humanity. What we should be feeling is not despair. It is rage and fury. And I want you to listen to me very well. not despair, rage, rebellion, and fury. We should be directing our energy very specifically at the people who are committing this. This is not humanity. This is a group of people, one collective, the state of Israel and the Jewish collective, which, as Zionists tell us, and they are correct, is overwhelmingly for Israel and for the genocide. 95%, 97%. The Jewish collective is behind this genocide. There's no question, there's no doubt about it. This is fact. And also behind this genocide, and they call it war. I call it genocide. They call it war. We call it genocide. Humanity calls it genocide. And also guilty and accountable is are the political establishments of the West, basically. Every one of those establishments who could have prevented this, or who could voiced or should have voiced a dissenting voice and chose not to. But those are the guilty parties, and this is not humanity. Western colonialism, white Western colonialism, and Jewish supremacy do not represent humanity. They are not the rule, they are an aberration, they are an anomaly. This is not normal human behavior. This is not naturally what people would do. The kind of a calculated, prolonged, sustained mass destruction of another group, it is not normal human behavior. It is not humanity. It is an ideology and political and military and financial forces that sustain it and carry it out. You could say that humanity should have done more or should be doing more to stop this. And this is another argument altogether, but I have to remind you about this as well. China is basically ready to take on the US. But I'm not sure it would be wise for China to challenge the US militarily in Palestine, or for Russia to do something like this. Which I think morally, this is what they should have done. Someone should have intervened militarily and stopped this. Yes. But we have to see what's at stake. If China challenges the US prematurely or without enough strategic consideration, the result could be a much bigger catastrophe and a destruction of the Chinese success story, which is something humanity can't afford because we depend on this. We as humanity depend on China making it and becoming a dominant global force which pushes aside what's called Western civilization, which has become a genocide collective. Genocide and cowardice and filth, squalor, disgust. We need China to succeed. Humanity does need China to succeed. And this is why it is so crucial that China conducts itself wisely, strategically. But anyway, this is not humanity doing this, and this is not human nature. This is one sick branch, very sick branch, extremely sick, deranged branch of humanity doing this. So rage and fury and not despair. Now let's move on to Netanyahu. What's happening now? Almost everywhere Netanyahu looks, he has very difficult and bad choices to make. I'm going to start with the internal, with the domestic Israeli front. I spoke about it in my not last video, but the one before that with the ICJ. There is growing opposition in the most important ranks of Israeli society and Israel military forces. There is growing opposition to this war. They call it war. This is genocide, but they call it war. More and more reservists don't want to be part of it anymore. And they don't only think it or feel it, they announce it. They are writing public letters. People from groups and units which are Israel cannot have any serious military effort without. Some of the most elite, prestigious units, including pilots, including all kinds of special commando units, in big numbers, not just one or two, but many thousands of people. And Israel is already in a difficult situation HR wise. It doesn't have enough people to maintain Netanyahu's psychopathy and his expansionism, Netanyahu and his right wing. They don't have enough people as is. So having so many people who are so important to the military infrastructure announcing they are not going to continue reporting for duty when they are called, and they don't report for duty, and they announce their refusal and reservations about this war, this is bad for Netanyahu. This is bad for Netanyahu, and this is strategic. This is strategic because once people make this choice, the first time is the hardest. When they are called again to do something deeply controversial or immoral, they're going to find it easier to say no. And I don't think there are going to be many more times like this because I think Israel is it is nearing the end of its days, basically. It's not viable. And why they have woken up to this reality just now is a different question. But this is the timing they chose. So Netanyahu feels a lot of pressure from this front. And this is, I don't want to get into this in this video, but this is a historical conflict between liberal Zionists, the mostly Ashkenazi urbanites, okay, and the right wingers, which includes the settlers, which are also Ashkenazi, but they have a different mentality, and the most of the Mizrahi population, which identifies with the right wing. So this has social elements to it, a social struggle element to it, but also a struggle of political power and prestige. Be it as it may, the most important people for Israel's military function are announcing they are not going to report the service anymore. And they want this war to end. And Netanyahu, of course, doesn't want this war to end. But how is he able to continue the war with more and more people stepping down? And we have only got here because of a series of bad choices Netanyahu made previously. He chose to expand Israel into Syria and into Lebanon, and he chose to continue and continue and continue the genocide and continue the operations in the West Bank, the ethnic cleansing there, and the oppression, the destruction, the violence. And so he has to also face Yemen. Netanyahu, through his choices, made things always worse for Israel. Israel chose to expand into Syria, but it doesn't make Israel more secure. It only puts another burden on the Israeli security establishment because now they have another front where they need many fighters and the logistic support to sustain this. Same with Lebanon. They chose to stay in 5 different spots, but it's not going to be easy to keep these spots. When Hezbollah decides, or facing international pressure, to withdraw from these spots. And this is consistent for all of Netanyahu's choices. Every time he moves ahead and pulls something off, he is in a more difficult situation. He could have ended this war a year ago. It would still have been a genocide, and I would still be at the same place, politically and otherwise. And his situation and Israel's situation would have been a lot better if he had taken that road. But he chose not to. He chose to escalate and expand all the time. So he has this front, and it's a problem, and not only in Israel, because there are voices in the Jewish world which are starting to sound voices of dissent. They are using the hostages, the captives, bring them home, finish the war, make a deal, all this bullshit. They never talk about the Palestinian casualties, but they will. They will, when they realize how much hate this genocide has created and generated towards the perpetrators. They're going to pretend like they care or cared about the Palestinian babies. But you can see and hear the initial tearing of this fake unity because they don't like each other. Liberal Zionists and radical right-wingers don't like each other. They hate each other. And Mizrahi and Ashkenazi don't like each other. They hate each other. But this has been going on so long, it can't hold anymore, this fake structure, which was the result of the shock of October 7. Now the shock has dissipated, and the truth is starting to emerge. So this is one aspect. Another aspect is Iran. What is Netanyahu going to do about Iran? By his nature and his previous choices, he always seeks to escalate. And Iran, as I've said many times before, is the crown jewel of his messianic fantasies. Toppling Iran is like you winning the lottery 50 times for Netanyahu. But Iran is a challenge he cannot solve, he cannot crack. So he has to bring the US in. But the US doesn't really want in. American politicians are too cowardly. Even Democrats don't speak about a possible war with Iran. There's a silence, conformity, complicity, total. They are controlled to an amazing extent. Even when the fate of the US itself is at stake, they don't dare defy Netanyahu and the Jewish lobby. This is freaking unbelievable. Nevertheless, this is the situation. Still, the US security establishment is not too happy and too keen on going to war with Iran. So Netanyahu either forces the US to go to a big, unimaginably expensive war in every way you can think about it, and as a result, Zionism and Netanyahu are going to be fiercely hated in the US. If Netanyahu pulls this off and he succeeds the Netanyahu way, what's going to be the result? In the US, Israel, Zionism, and Netanyahu are going to be hated like we cannot even imagine. Because this is going to be a destructive blow for the US, which is already unstable and in a very shaky situation, economically and politically. And this does nothing for the US fight, the big fight against China. If the US goes to war with Iran, it won't be able to take on. If China decides to take Taiwan, the minute the US goes to war with Iran, the US can do nothing about it. So this is if Netanyahu succeeds. But what if he doesn't succeed? What if Netanyahu doesn't succeed in pulling the US to the Iran war? What's he going to do next? He spent his whole political life promising Israelis he's going to solve the Iranian problem, which only means the destruction of Iran, Libya style. He said it himself. So what does he do? What does he do then? And if he does succeed in pulling the US into this war, Israel is going to get whacked. The missiles are going to be nonstop for days and months, and for days and weeks and months, nonstop. Life in Israel is going to be impossible in case of this big war breaking. So everywhere he looks, he has only bad choices to make. And Netanyahu cannot have peace or relative peace for another reason. Because if he stops the genocide and doesn't go to war with Iran, what is the world going to talk about? The world is going to talk about the West Bank. And Israel cannot afford it. An Israeli right wing cannot afford it. They have built their entire political lives and consciousness on Israel taking over the West Bank and cleansing it from Palestinians and taking over, annexing. But Israel is not going to be able to do that when the whole world is watching. To do that, Israel needs to be in a big, big war. So wherever Netanyahu looks, he has only bad choices to make. He cannot face his opposition. He depends on them to operate his military. If he does succeed in pulling the US into war, it's going to be big trouble for Israel in the US domestically, because this is going to be the last straw. This is going to be the last straw. All this wall of denial that the Jewish lobby and AIPAC have managed to erect, it is very weak and very fragile. The minute something as this drastic happens, they are fucked. People are not going to care. They are going to speak up. So what will they do? They will create an American police state at the service of Zionism and a war against Iran? This is their dream. But what kind of a choice is this? What kind of a future is this? And if by some miracle Trump reveals enough backbone to not go to war with Iran, then Netanyahu is truly fucked. What is going to be the big achievement he brings the Israelis after 2 years of war or more? He didn't eliminate Hezbollah. He won't eliminate Hamas. The ethnic cleansing of Gaza is not going to happen unless Israel still fights for another 2 years, which seems almost impossible. It's not entirely impossible, but it is almost impossible. And Hezbollah is waiting to rejoin the fighting. So anywhere Netanyahu looks, he can't solve this puzzle. He created such a mess. And remember, he made a mess of Israel's economy. He made Israel hated globally. And he hasn't improved Israel's situation in any way, not militarily, not politically, not diplomatically, in any way. There's only one achievement that can make this sacrifice worthwhile for the Israelis, and that's the head of the snake, as they call it, which is Iran. But this is something Israel is unable to do alone. And I doubt even Israel and the US combined can achieve it. So Netanyahu is basically down a corridor with many locked doors. He can't get in anywhere. What is he going to do? He's not going to give up. This is not Netanyahu. He's going to come up with some new fuckery. His best bet to drag the US to war with Iran is to have some major mysterious terror attack in the US or in Europe, maybe against a Jewish institution, something major. So yeah, a false flag is definitely a possibility. But returning to normalcy and sanity is not even an option. The only option he has, the only options he has, is more derangement, more confrontation, more hate, more war, more loss of support, more loss of people from all the places he needs them most. So, what appears to be as a series of achievements and victories really made life almost impossible for Netanyahu in Israel. Because now they have nowhere to go. They have nowhere to go. Choosing more war is going to be extremely difficult. Extremely difficult. Remember, Israel was forced to sign a truce with Hezbollah, not only because Hezbollah was defeated, it's because Israel was on the verge of collapsing. Israel can hardly maintain its campaign in Gaza and the occupation in the West Bank. It cannot do a war in Lebanon at the same time. It definitely can't do a war with Iran on top of that. And it cannot allow the world to show interest in the West Bank, which will happen if there's calm. So everywhere Netanyahu looks, he only has very bad, destructive choices to make as a result of his equally stupid previous choices. So it's going to be fascinating now to follow what he does and what he chooses to do. I'm so curious to know what dirty trick is going to pull next. And by the way, I'm so happy I recollected this now. One major proof, excellent proof that this is Israel's situation and they don't know what to do next and how to move on. We have seen over the past couple of weeks hilarious news items about Turkey being a danger to Israel and Egypt doing something potentially very risky in the Sinai Desert, the Sinai Peninsula. You can already see that they are planning their next escalation. I don't feel like they know exactly what it's going to be. Maybe they do, but I don't get a sense of what it is. Nevertheless, they are building this momentum of escalation, which Israel, as I've said, has no chance of sustaining. It has to be the US. And for US to do this, the US has to destroy itself in the process. The good news is Israel and Zionism are basically fucked. They can't get out of this. They can't. Unless a world war between China and Russia and the US and the West erupts, and then no one minds Israel, which may be their current aspiration, I don't know. Israel can get out of it. And there's no way the US can manage the 50 major wars it suddenly took upon itself with Iran and Russia and China and trade war and Greenland and Canada and all this nonsense, all these fantasies and dreams. This is all happening mostly within this insane asylum that has become Western civilization, that Western civilization has become, with one patient very prominent in leading this revolt, and his name is Benjamin Netanyahu, and he has led them to a place where they almost have nowhere else to go. They have to jump off a cliff, and they have no idea where they're going to land. And this is the result of all Netanyahu's successes. This is success Netanyahu style. See you in the next video.